Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. And as we record this, it's December the 15th, 2025. As you can tell my regular co-pilot, Clay Hall, he's got a little PTO coming to him. Yeah, I'll just call it PTO. He's off taking care of family matters, seeing his mom, etc., down in South Carolina. So I'm flying solo today. I remember the first time I flew a plane solo was on my 16th birthday way back in 1970. They let me loose in a Cessna 150. I took off and landed at Angelina County, as I called it, International Airport outside Lufkin, Texas. Successfully took off and landed 3 times. I'm going to try to do solo again here. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be bumpy, just like that ride was. But the bottom line is it's the Tim May Show. And, of course, as I referred to it later on in my regular interview with Matt Wilhelm each week, we revert back to Mondays with Matt. Last week it was Wednesdays with Wilhelm because we had some things we had to jam in there from Sunday and Monday with Ohio State making the college football playoff. Not just making it, but where it ended up. And, of course, we all know Ohio State is going to play the winner of Miami, Texas A&M, the first-round game being played at Texas A&M this coming weekend. That'll be must-watch TV, I think, for all Ohio State fans as well as those two schools. So it promises to be a very interesting football game. Let's put it that way. Whether the home field advantage will hold sway for Texas A&M remains to be seen. But it's going to be a curious opponent for Ohio State no matter what happens. And with that said, I can't go much farther. Most of this show is going to be me and Matt Wilhelm chopping it up about a lot of things, including what does Ohio State do in this interim, between this long interim between the loss to Indiana in the Big Ten championship game and the Cotton Bowl on December 31st, when, like I said, they'll play the winner of Miami and Texas A&M. Well, if you remember back in 2002 when Ohio State won the national championship, Matt Wilhelm was on that team, was a big-time All-American linebacker that helped Ohio State beat Miami. And they, too, had a longer layoff between the time they beat Michigan to move to 13-0 and the time they took on Miami, which I think was January 3rd, as Matt and I figure out in the interview. January 3rd, took on Miami, unbeatable Miami, 13-point favorite Miami. In the Fiesta Bowl, back in the BCS days, the Bowl Championship Series, which, by the way, I had no problem with identifying the top 2 teams in the country and having them hook up, just like I had no trouble with identifying the top 4 teams in the country starting in 2014 when Ohio State also won that inaugural setup and won the national championship. I think 4 is about as deep as you need to go in this, but there's a lot more money for the college football playoff if they extend it, as we've all found out. Of course, Ohio State won it last year when it first went to 12 teams. So we'll see if they can hang on to some of that magic going into this one. But the bottom line was they had a long layoff. How did they handle that layoff? What was the secret to it? Because, like I said, they came out and upset the number 1 team in the country by acclamation, Miami, for the national championship. So we'll see if this team can do that. What advice Matt Wilhelm would have for Ryan Day and his staff, not only in handling the layoff, because they'll be practicing, they'll be revving it back up pretty big this week, I do believe, trying to keep an edge to a certain extent. But how would he handle the Brian Hartline, already been hired by USF as its next head coach, but also being the play caller and offensive coordinator for this upcoming game? This upcoming run is what Ohio State's hoping to make it, a 3-game run to another back-to-back national championships. Be the first time in history for Ohio State. But, what would be his advice or whatever for Ryan Day and company handling that? It's a curious conversation we have, I do believe. We also talk about the Heisman Trophy and Fernando Mendoza, who was voted the winner of the 2025 Heisman Trophy, ahead of Diego Pavia of Vanderbilt, Jeremiah Love, the running back from Notre Dame, and, of course, Julian Sayin, the quarterback from Ohio State. You always figured that the winner of the Big Ten championship game, at least I did, was going to win the Heisman Trophy, and that was found out. And obviously, Fernando Mendoza won going away. I think that was the correct call in that voting. But of course, as you probably well know by now, Diego Pavia didn't think it was the correct call. Man, pretty embarrassing. Pretty embarrassing is the main word. I just wonder if anybody in Diego Pavia's life, except maybe his agent, has his ear when it comes to, hey, sometimes, hey, dial it back, brother. Sometimes shut up, right? You were a Heisman finalist. You finished number 2 in the voting. Who were you 5 years ago? You built your career on your own. And little short man coming out of New Mexico, playing for a junior college, then playing for New Mexico State, ends up at Vanderbilt. And no doubt about it, he's a major reason why Vanderbilt under Clark Lee has, I don't know if resurgence is the right word to use. I'm not sure Vanderbilt's ever surged, but their rise to fame and claim the last couple of years, just like with Indiana and Kurt Signetti and what he brought to Indiana, and then bringing in Fernando Mendoza from California this year as a transfer to basically give them, I think, that final ingredient they needed to at least win the Big Ten Conference Championship for the first time since 1967, first time outright since 1945. Diego Pavia has meant the same thing, if not more, to Vanderbilt. As we know, they only lost 2 times this year, to Alabama and to Texas. One win against either one of those teams would have vaulted Vanderbilt into the college football playoff, but it didn't happen. With that said, I was really looking forward to Diego Pavia playing in his bowl game against Iowa just to see what he can do. But man, after what happened on Saturday night, deep into the night, after he did not win the Heisman Trophy, I'm now rooting for Iowa, unabashedly rooting for Iowa to give Vanderbilt a black eye coming out of the finally in this season, because it's just amazing. Some people know how to handle things, some people don't. Some people become entitled when, in fact, their whole life has been about building themselves up and making people notice them. Suddenly they feel entitled. Now, give me a break. I mean, if you've been paying attention. By the way, when it comes to being an Iowa fan, my new daughter-in-law, Lizzie, married to my middle kid, second son, Corey. She's a huge Iowa fan. Her grandfather even played for Iowa way back in I think it was the 50s. But he's a cool dude, and so is Lizzie. Lizzie's a cool person. But let's just see what Diego Pavia had to say, in case you're all after this, or all out of sorts when it comes to knowing what I'm talking about. He reposted an Instagram story of himself and his offensive line, and it was captioned F-all the voters, but family for life, meaning him and his offensive line and all of his all of his buddies at Vanderbilt. And then he was seen later by voters. He meant voters for the Heisman Trophy, of which I am one. And he was photographed at a club later that night with a sign that read F Indiana in his section. And he looked like he endorsed the sign in the video. You can get on Twitter, or you can, as Kurt Signetti could say, you could Google it and probably find it. And of course, someone the next day said, what are you doing? And it was someone, I guess, that he would listen to who said it. And he supposedly wrote this mea culpa. Mea culpa is the right word in this. Maybe apology is more the right word, but it sounds more like a mea culpa the more you read it. But he writes this because it's explaining why he made that big mistake on Saturday night in his reaction to not winning the Heisman Trophy. And it said, being part of the Heisman Trophy ceremony last night as a finalist was such an honor. As a competitor, just like in everything I do, I wanted to win. To be so close to my dream and come up short was painful. I didn't handle those emotions well at all and did not represent myself the way I wanted to. I have much love and respect for the Heisman voters and the selection process. Okay. And I apologize for being disrespectful. It was a mistake, and I am sorry, he wrote on his social media. He went on to call Mendoza an elite competitor and a deserving winner of the award. He applauded Mendoza's accomplishments and shouted out saying, and love, meaning giving them some recognition for what they had done. And then there's another quote. He goes, I've been doubted my whole life. Every step of my journey, I've had to break down doors and fight for myself because I've learned that nothing would be handed to me. My family has always been in my corner, and my teammates, coaches, and staff have my six, meaning 6 o'clock, his rear end. I love them, and I am grateful for them. And then he wrapped up the statement expressing excitement for the upcoming ReliaQuest Bowl, in which Vanderbilt will face Iowa in Pavia's last college game on December 31. Interesting the way he erupts sometimes, that he's out of Volcano Vista High School in New Mexico. So we shouldn't be surprised by the eruptions. I guess it's still a tectonic zone over there. But the bottom line is that's not, I thought his true reaction was his true reaction. And why you would say those things afterward, taste is everything. But everybody now who uses the F word like it's the coin of the realm, I think it's time now to start backing off of it a little bit, because I'm not sure it makes you a big man. It doesn't make you a Mr. Know-It-All by throwing an F word in there. And yeah, I'm as guilty as anybody of throwing F words in there. I don't do it on my podcasts because I just, believe it or not, I am so vain. I think there might be a 8 or 10-year-old or 15-year-old watching my podcast, maybe 2 or 3 of them, who knows? I just don't want the F word on my podcast. The people who use it on their podcast, hey, everybody has different stripes. But the bottom line is that was so disrespectful for all things concerning Diego Pavia, including how far he has come. And what a smudge it put on how far he has come, that in fact he got back down into the gutter and made some kind of comments like that. He's got to live with that. That will be on his permanent record as long as he plays football, or as long as he does anything else he does. So tough luck not having an advisor around you to tell you don't do that. And tough luck being at a party where you're not just disparaging Mendoza, you're disparaging the team he played for, which would be like Mendoza being at a party that night and having F Vanderbilt, running off behind him as he made some kind of smirk. Like this guy had no chance. If you know about Mendoza's story, he was a 0-star coming out of high school in the Miami area. And as he pointed out in his Heisman acceptance speech, which was fantastic, by the way. This guy, one of the great extemporaneous players of our time, of our era, when it comes to a football player being able to express himself. But he got one offer coming out of high school. I believe it was to Cal, because he ended up going to California. Not an easy school to get into, even if you are recruited as a football player from an academic standpoint, et cetera. But then he transferred, as we all know, to Indiana this season. But he had 0 stars coming out because, like he said, just when he was ready to prove himself in high school, along came COVID, and along came few, if any, high school football games. So, he's a son of Cuban immigrants, and he's the first of that ilk to win the Heisman Trophy, and very proud of his background, very proud of where he's come from, very proud of his family, what has helped guide him along the way. His mom, we all know his love for his mom, who has an affliction, and you always wishing her the best of thoughts as life goes on. But the way Fernando Mendoza handled himself before, during, and after, that's exemplary. That's who young kids, instead of looking at the F-slinging fellows out there, they should follow a guy whose name starts with F, Fernando Mendoza. They should follow Fernando and his teachings, because what a speech, what a career in college football. And there's a good chance he's going to be, if not one of the top quarterbacks taken in the 2026 draft. But of course, just like Julian's saying, he has more work to do. He has another goal he can achieve, which is playing for a national championship. Of course, I'm getting all my metaphors mixed up here, all my teams mixed up. Indiana is going to play in the Rose Bowl. Ohio State's going to play in the Cotton Bowl, in the in the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. Whether we'll see a rematch in the national championship game, that's really putting the cart before the horse. And because they have 2 games to play before they possibly get that great rematch. That was 1 versus 2 just a week and a half ago, and highly rated, one of the top 3 college football games of the year. So we'll see where it goes. But too bad for Diego Pavia. Congratulations, Fernando Mendoza, and congratulations to Julian Sayin. As Ryan Day pointed out, in his first year as a starting quarterback in college football, look what he did. Look where he can go. And then, of course, Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame got left out of the college football playoff. I truly believe Alabama should have been left out and Notre Dame should have been in. I have no problems with Miami being in since Miami beat Notre Dame. We went through all that earlier last week. But the bottom line is congratulations to Jeremiah Love, also one of the great human beings you're going to meet based on the stories and everything you read about him leading up to the Heisman. Heck, even before they played Ohio State last year in the national championship game. Well, what a great story for Jeremiah Love. And by the way, speaking of reactions, Mekhi Lemon was named the winner of the Biletnikoff Award. And with that said, Jeremiah Smith, I voted for Jeremiah Smith for the Biletnikoff. He didn't win it. But the bottom line is, he put up a cryptic sort of bad words laced reaction to the news that he did not win the Biletnikoff Award, but it was just a short statement from a movie that a guy made about basically how vengeance would be his. I mean, I'm just summing that up because I sure don't want to repeat everything that was said in that video clip. So whether that's similar to what Diego Pavia put up, that's for you to judge. But at least Jeremiah Smith didn't say it himself. He endorsed it, I guess, by putting it up or letting it speak for him. We'll see how that drives him going into the playoffs. Sometimes you just have to, swallow the medicine and move on with your life. And, a popularity contest is a popularity contest. And once it's over, well, for one reason or another, you didn't get the popularity like maybe you thought you deserved or thought was owed to you, depending on your point of view. That's too bad, but you do move on. And if it can motivate you, hey, good for you. And by the way, if you're looking for some last minute gifts, by the way, for that man in your life, I would recommend buying a measuring tape or ruler from Vanderbilt if they've got any on sale in their Vanderbilt gift shop, because Diego Pavia is listed as 6 feet tall, and you guys and gals all saw the picture of Diego Pavia with the other finalists. I'll leave that just floating right there for you to consume. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get back to the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall, who's not here, as I pointed out minutes ago. Let's get right into my weekly conversation with Matt Wilhelm. Maybe it'll be weekly with Wilhelm. That way I don't have to pigeonhole a day. You know what I mean? A weekly with Wilhelm instead of Monday with Matt or Wednesdays with Wilhelm. But that's for food for thought down the road. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Matt Wilhelm.
Oh, man, we're back to our regularly scheduled programming, Mondays with Matt, instead of that Wednesdays with Wilhelm. And Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall. But basically this episode is Matt and May 101. But, dude, a lot's happened even since we talked the last time. And but number one, I want to get into the first things first. I was very impressed with the Fernando Mendoza speech after he won the Heisman Trophy the other night. Uh, I, when you look at it, probably the right guy won the award this year. When you look at everything, add up everything, the fact he transferred from Cal to Indiana to uplift Indiana, give it that one little edge it took to get over the top this year. Now it's still hasn't won a national championship, but they're undefeated for the first time ever, or at least the first time 13-0, and won a Big Ten championship at least first time outright since 1945, first time since 1967 when they tied for it. Bottom line is, he I don't know. He fit the bill. Let's put it that way. But just what was your take on Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman Trophy?
I think, what Indiana has done with, and again, I talk about it almost every week that we bring it up. Kind of enamored with what Curt Signetti has done in, call it 28 months since taking over that job. I also believe that when you look back at the pedigree and the success, is look, Google me, I win, right? It's what he's done. And I think you're going to see, we've seen the defensive coordinator. I think Brian Haynes has been not promoted, but extended with a significant pay raise. So again, when good things happen in the professional and now the college level because of what's at stake, and what's at stake is not just accolades. I think it's the money that's at stake for these programs. You see, all ships rise, and I think that's what Curt Signetti has done. I thought that Fernando Mendoza, I kind of knew he was going to win. I was actually pulling for Diego Pavia,
Well,
just because, and in
yeah.
some cases, not so much the. I'm not the biggest fan of the ego,
Yeah.
and that he and the way he presents himself, but I thought the body of work, being his size, being where he's come from, overcoming a lot. And doing it in the SEC,
Yep.
week in, week out, was why I put him kind of in the running for it. But as you said, I thought Fernando Mendoza, every opportunity throughout the season, in ahead of the Big Ten championship game, on talking to the media ahead of the Heisman, buttoned up, put together, smart kid from what seems to be a great family,
Yep.
who were both there to celebrate him. And as you said, a great representation of college football and of the quarterback position. And I think while emotionally, overwhelmed with the moment and thanking all the people, what I kind of drew myself to the most was the kind of the ending, for all the kids,
Yeah.
that have no stars, that don't think they can, that, might not be noticed and might not have the hype associated with their name. And then he kind of detailed out what it takes. And that's in some cases, even as a dad, as a former football player, the message that I give my son, is, dude, just put your head down and work,
Yeah.
keep your nose clean, put your head down and work, and let the people around you tell you when to pick it up and let you know you've kind of arrived. And it seems as if that's what Fernando Mendoza has done. And in this case, he's done it with an amazing leader in Curt Signetti at Indiana, who has played themselves into a position to be the number one team in the country and the number one seed in the college football playoff.
Yeah. But that Fernando Mendoza's message resonated, man, with a lot of people. I do believe, and Baker Mayfield had kind of the same story. He came. I mean, the place he wanted to go didn't want him, and then he ends up at Texas Tech, and they kind of grew apart and whatever. He ends up walks on for the most part in Oklahoma, and next thing you know, a couple of years later, he's a Heisman Trophy winner and big time draft pick, et cetera. And it just shows you believe it first. The first thing you ever have to do is believe in yourself, have the confidence in yourself, knowing that you have the wherewithal. If in fact you work, but then put in the work, right? And then eventually, what's the old American way, right? Somebody's going to find you. I mean, you're going to get a shot. Go ahead.
And I think that's what's also unique about the four candidates is, two of them are from the blue blood, high school recruits, and I know I'm going to count Julian. I know Julian Sayin started at Alabama, but before he ever, played a snap, he then transferred to Ohio State. So I'm just, for the sake of the exercise and the argument, is not even argument, is let's just say he started at a great place in Bama, and then obviously is now at a great place at Ohio State.
Yeah.
You look at what Jeremiah Love, going to Notre Dame and being a high school recruit that's been developed. And then I actually think the top two vote getters and the winner kind of embody the current college landscape.
Yeah.
Because they, JUCO national JUCO national championship or Division II national championship with Pavia, goes into Mexico State, plays with the chip on his shoulder, earns an opportunity to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt pays him, probably decently to come the first year, his junior year, and then really broke him off as the leader of the pack this past season to lead them to 10-2. Probably one of the first four out of the college football playoff, and now the runner-up for the Heisman.
Yeah.
So overcoming things and using the tools that are available to young men now, and the tools and rules to end up where you want to be, to make the money, to go win and whatever. And then you also look at Fernando Mendoza, the winner. Underwhelming high school recruit, out of California, goes to Cal, doesn't get that opportunity. Signetti goes and snags him through the portal, puts him in his offense, creates that, fast, relentless, smart, whatever, their mantra is. And he embodies that at a place that is on this, upward trajectory, and bam, it's Heisman number one overall, Heisman number one team in the country, Big Ten championship. So it's like you look at like two traditional paths, kind of with Sayin and when Jeremiah Love, and then you look at two that are now new but unorthodox, which is, and this is what I also tell kids, as people look to me sometimes as a coach and someone who's around football or centered around high school recruiting because of Mason's journey. It's like, it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish.
Yep.
So for someone who thinks they're better than the offers that they have available or have no offers, if you want to keep playing, man, put a helmet on, go find a spot, go get on the field and ball, and then level up and level up and level up. And like your dreams become more real by the year. You've just got to be open and willing to do the work. And I think that's what we've seen out of Diego Pavia and Fernando Mendoza, to earn those opportunities for not only themselves, but the team as well, and the successes that are now attached to their names this 2025 football season.
Yeah, it is amazing in this world. But I'm telling you, I'm talking about just watching that process. But, since I've been covering college football, quarterbacks have been transferring, but always had to sit out a year, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, you get there and you're there a year or two and you figure out exactly, am I in the pecking order? Am I in the right spot in the pecking order? If I'm not, do I move on? In Fernando Mendoza's case, he ended up at Cal. Last year at Cal, he had a hell of a season, but he wanted to take a shot at the brass ring, and he did. Like he pointed out, COVID hit just when he was about to make his move as a high school player, and nobody knew who he was or knew much about him. He got one offer, and he jumped at it. But it is amazing. You've got to, by self-awareness, you've got to know what you're all about. But then you got to know what other people then think of you. Am I still going to get that shot? And, man, I've always been curious about this. Bruce Hooley and I used to agree on this. We don't, some people say that if you're good enough, somebody's eventually going to find you. And our argument was, I know I grew up in Lufkin, Texas. Lufkin, Texas, when I was growing up to high school, they ran the I formation. And then all of a sudden a new coach came in and they ran the wishbone. Not the same quarterback. You know what I mean? The guys who were in line thinking they were going to be the quarterback were now, cast aside. And this is high school, though. Back then you couldn't just move to like Nacogdoches. Well, I guess you could. You could move up the road to Nacogdoches maybe and find your office. But I mean, at the whims of the coaching staff, your future can be snapped one way or the other. And that's I wanted to ask you this. I mean, I think quarterback more than any other position, you've got to end up at the right place at the right time with the right opportunity and then take advantage of it. Because unlike linebacker, where you can play 4 or 6 linebackers in a game if you want to. You're going to play one quarterback if you're a coach. You spend so much time getting your system in, et cetera. And so to see it now where you can kind of prove yourself here and then somebody else goes, hey, you're exactly what we're looking for here. It's kind of a cool time to be a quarterback in a lot of respects, right?
It absolutely is. And I think to use this instance as an example, you look at Kurt Signetti in the year one success they had last year at Indiana,
Yes.
making the college football playoff, then in many cases, I'll call it, say, kind of being embarrassed, in the first round and with the exit the way that they did. But I think I give props to this man, as a football coach, as he went back, licked his wounds, and he started to fill those voids.
Yep.
That he goes, man, if we're just a bunch of JMU transfers and whatever's left from Indiana, which wasn't a very good football team the past 5 years before it, and a speckling of other, transfer portal kids, what do I need to go out and get, for next year? And I think that not only does he go out and get Fernando Mendoza, but he starts, the offensive line,
Yes.
And the defensive players, so he had the core pieces coming back, but they strategically went out, and I think that's, when you have not only the quarterback, but like you have to have the support of I know the collectives aren't so much a thing anymore, but the rev share, you got to have the NIL, you got to have the boosters, you got to have the facilities, because, also to your point, to kind of bring it all full circle, you have to have, either a play caller or an offensive coordinator that has a system that's very attractive to the skill set of said quarterback, because, and I think we found that out, and again, only because we monitored it very closely as a family. Gio Lopez from South Alabama, North Carolina pays the kid, like $1.82 million to come from, the FCS level, where he was, maybe player of the year or, very, very good player, to North Carolina with Belichick and Freddie Kitchens. And it's like, and it's the wrong, they're trying to, they got the wrong players with the wrong quarterback, and they're, patchworked offensive line. And it just looked, discombobulated all 12 games. So while there's money and while you can use the portal, it doesn't always work out the way that it did for Fernando Mendoza. And I'm not just talking about the Heisman, I'm talking about success in a system. There's got to be belief, there's got to be structure, and you've got to have the right guy. And I think for Fernando Mendoza, I think it goes back to the messaging, is just like the work ethic that he put into his goals for himself.
Yes.
It wasn't like, I'm going to work and just consistently get better. It's like, my goal is way up here, and I'm going to work every day to go get there. And I think that's what, it's very satisfying. Maybe not so much because it's a competitor of Ohio State and another competitor to Julian Sand for this award. But this didn't just happen, wasn't just a flash in the pan. It didn't happen overnight. This kid has been working at this for years to get to this moment.
Yeah. Man, it sounded like he rehearsed his speech, though, for the last 5 years. I mean, guys that can stand up and speak extemporaneously, although, he thought it all out. It still was impressive. And, what's funny about him, I just wanted to get it's almost every interview that I've heard him do. And these are impromptu questions, but with the seemingly rehearsed answers. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like he's thought through those moments. You know what I mean? I mean, he knows what he wants to get out there, and it's almost like he's reading a teleprompter in his head, which leads you to the intelligence this guy has got in terms of the
Tim,
gift he's got.
I'll just say this. I mean, you don't
communicate.
You don't go to Cal as a dummy.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, I'll just say, you don't transfer from Cal, to Indiana, which, I mean, you're talking, and this is, again, only because I'm privy to, where these schools are ranked. It's like, these are two of the top, 30 academic schools in the country. So I find it hilarious because I kind of do these and I'm in media. You see me kind of I think it's funny how he has to kind of temper his hand usage, because when he gets passionate and he wants to have his hands and stacking, and he wants to it's like, it's funny. And you can also tell that, I would imagine, it's great for these young men that, and then we have, one of the best who's leaving us at Ohio State, and Jerry Emig, these communication directors that can kind of foreshadow the success that a young man or young men are going to have. And so they dabble in some media training, in little pockets of time when, Ohio State's on, big noon kickoff every week, and you're getting, Clatton Gus Johnson at the facility, and they do the Jenny Taft sit downs, and they're going to get the Herb Street interview, and you want them to be polished because this is a big moment for them, their family, their high school, the area they come from. And then you get into for Ohio State, and for that young man, because millions of people, and we found that out, Ohio State, between Indiana, Michigan, and the Texas game, three of the most watched, if not the most watched football games, college football games this entire season. So the eyeballs are on you. So for you to be able to make that impression, I think that's, props to Curt Signetti, Indiana's communication staff, and Fernando Mendoza and his family for raising a quality young man who also happens to be a very, very good football player who was prepared for that moment.
Yeah, it is cool. Sometimes the worst thing you can see is a guy to get a major award and just
Stumble.
Step up, but not everybody's cut out to be a public speaker. I mean,
no,
I know I'm,
100%.
Because it is intimidating when you're standing up in front of lights and cameras and things like that. But so I don't think you have to be Abraham Lincoln, or Fernando Mendoza, but at least have something prepared in your head, that
Sure.
Otherwise, hey, thanks for the award. Thanks, Mom and Dad, and you go sit down, thank you, God, and go sit down. I mean, at least have some kind of message because it's your moment. Those moments are precious where you have a chance to impress.
Absolutely.
You have a chance to make an impression, not about yourself, but make an impression on other people, the youth. I mean, Fernando Mendoza, like you said, the end of his speech, just like with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow did not waste that moment. He had prepared for that moment when he got the Heisman Trophy and brought light to a dark situation down where he grew up in Athens, of people going to bed hungry and things like that. I mean, it's your moment to really make an impression. And, not everybody has that wherewithal, right? But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, to your point, in 10 years, and again, I'll just, spin off this really quickly, is I do believe, even including Julian Sayin, it was a consensusly underwhelming, Heisman group. And I had the opportunity in the kitchen. Mason, my son, was like, well, who do you think is going to win? And I go, and we kind of talked about probably going to be Mendoza, but we want Pavia. We both kind of agreed. And I said, what's crazy, and only because it's firsthand information for us as Buckeye fans, is like, when you look at the stats of Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins and CJ Stroud back-to-back years, you're talking like 4,000 plus passing yards and almost 50 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And these guys are just touching 3,000 or even below 3,000 and like 30 touchdowns, and yet Justin Fields and CJ Stroud and those guys were finalists and didn't even win it, know? And so it's, that's the thing. But my whole point is when you look back when you look back in 10 years, so say 2035, and you look back at Heisman winners, you're still going to think this is an underwhelming class. But to your point about Fernando Mendoza, you're going to remember, what was his Heisman moment? Because everyone has their Heisman moment. And I think it's the throw against Penn State in the back of the end zone, which is a great throw under duress, but an even better catch by one of his receivers. You're going to think about his impact, because I thought that's the other thing about him being a quality young man is, going to the Adidas store in New York on his Heisman visit. And I think it might be MS, but taking a group of, I believe, children and their families, all expense paid Adidas shopping trip. And then his speech, who is he as a human, who is he as a football player? Who is he as a human? So he conveyed, how grateful he was for all the people. I actually thought it was kind of funny that he kind of glazed over Signetti in the office of staff so quickly, like one quick mention. And then it was like, bam, my family, bam, and it just is what it is. But to your point, it was rehearsed. It was well thought out. I don't think he left anybody out, but that it might not be the gaudy stats in 10 years from the 2025 Heisman champion, but it's the human that won this award at the unique place with Curt Signetti and the Hoosiers being the number one team in the country.
Yeah. And, obviously he blossomed even more under Signetti and that coaching staff, but basically, a senior. I mean, he'd already, many year player. He'd already developed into the guy that you went to go out and plug and play into your offense. You know what I mean? It's like, that's what I'm saying about this transfer situation now. It's like you can go get somebody who has already played and
Yeah.
made mistakes, made those big mistakes that cost you in games, and he comes in and has his year. You know, everybody
Yeah.
has a year. Even Archie Griffin, he won 2 Heismans, but his junior year was probably the year, you know, for him in terms of just what he did statistically. His senior year was really good too, but he kind of rode the
I'll just say
coattails
this:
of that, to 2 Heismans.
step away from the Heisman Trophy candidates, and there's guys that are making themselves a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
All over the place. And again, the one best example is Arvell Reese.
Oh.
Arvell Reese was, you're excited about him as a Glenville kid coming down to Columbus. That pipeline that's been consistent.
Yep.
And last year he was running down on kickoff.
Yeah.
And and a garbage time linebacker behind the guys that we had, and just nose to the grindstone, development, gets his opportunity, sees his opportunity, and then by all expectation, he's being mocked like top 10 in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
In one season at Ohio State. And that's why, I'll also say, Fernando Mendoza, likely number 1 team in the country, wins the Heisman, also being mocked number 1 overall in the NFL draft. So opportunity with the right place, with the right hunger and discipline and development in one season is really all it takes for you to, flip a narrative on its head about you as a person and about a program.
Yeah. Like Matt Patricia coming in with exactly the recipes to put Arvell Reese in the places, and then Arvell Reese having the discipline to play the position, and also being guided by one of the great linebackers to ever play the game in James Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
I would put you and Laurinaitis right there. What do you think?
He's here and I'm here. He's up here.
You know what I'm saying, though? I mean,
I do.
But just to have so many people opening your eyes to what you can be, and then putting you in position. Now it's up to you to go out and make the plays, right? I mean, it's that simple. If you don't, hey, get somebody, run somebody else in there.
Absolutely.
Hey, real quick, speaking of that, let's move on to something else, and then we'll end up talking about, if you don't mind, just the situation at Michigan, and just but that we'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
Ohio State in 2002, this little team that could, called Ohio State, ran off 13 wins in a row, and won the Big Ten championship, and was number 1 in the country. I do believe. No, y'all were y'all number 1 or number 2 going into the bowl game?
Number 2.
Yeah, ended up number 2 in the after the regular season was over, and y'all got matched with a little team that could, called Miami, which just had done it a year before, won a national championship. And y'all end up pulling the upset, if that's what y'all call it. Y'all were 13-point underdogs. Your running back wore number 13. Y'all had won 13 games in a row, all kinds of 13s you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
Then y'all became the first team ever in major college football to go 14-0, and you won a national championship. My point is, between the Michigan game played 2 days after Thanksgiving and y'all's national championship game against Miami, which was January 3rd, somebody else needs to do the math. I can't ever do the math on those kind of things. But it was more than a month you guys were off. And yet, in the national championship game against Miami, which also had basically a month off, y'all hit the ground running and pulled one of the great upsets. Now you look back on it now, well, look at all those NFL players they had there. Everybody rewrites history after history's happened, right? Well, I want to be on the right side of history. But what do you think y'all got? What do you think Tressel did right in that interim to keep you guys on the straight and narrow, to keep y'all with an edge about yourself, despite the fact you were off for so long? Because this Ohio State team is facing not quite as long a drop off, but a time off, but close, maybe a week or so difference. But what do you think helped y'all keep that edge? Do you think during that time, Matt?
I think it was a perfect blend of rest and work, and I think that's in some cases the recipe. And I also believe, going back to last year, knowing that the way that our regular season ended last year was with a loss, and this year's kind of season in the Big Ten championship also ends in a loss. So it allows you, and we didn't have that situation, but I'm just kind of referencing, it's like, it
Yeah.
allows you to reflect. And I think, and sometimes when you're in a season and but yet you have time and yet you still have a game, there's a lot of reflection or self-study. While also sometimes I hate to say it, I mean, any coach, I'm not taking a shot at anybody. It's just what it is. It's like sometimes you're just kind of going through the motions because you don't have an opponent to prepare for. So even like right now at Ohio State, like, are you watching film and cutting up? Are coaches watching film and cutting up Texas A&M and Miami? Yes. But you're not studying it to the detail that you are because you don't know which it is yet. You're becoming familiar.
Yeah.
And so to go back to your question is, I think it's an experienced head coach. And again, because it's the second year of the 12-team playoff, last year we know how that, we lost to that team up north and then, played Tennessee at home. And so now we're going to have that bye. So it's all going to be, new for Coach Day. But I think Coach Day and his coordinators and probably assistant coaches as well sit down and just go, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what, and they lay out maybe, the 2 or 3 weeks. And it goes back to my overlying point, which is we're going to give these guys a couple of days, to decompress, and again, that time might have already happened, given that we're, a week and some days removed from the loss
Indiana.
in Indianapolis, is we're going to give these guys some days, but yet we don't want them to lose their edge. And I think in some cases, I recall it now that we're talking about it, is like, I think it's not even, you're not even on the field to do structured football stuff. You're kind of like, you go back into off-season mode, kind of like, and it's just Mick Marotti, Coach Mick, putting you through on-field change of direction. You might do some sprints to kind of get, some of the lactic acid and the recovery aspect. So it's not like sprints like it is in the off-season preparing. It's from a maintenance standpoint, you're going to get some real, and again, when you have these breaks, the one thing for a lot of fans that don't know is like your body, you never lift the same weight or as heavy or as much as you did in the off season during the season. So, 2 or 3 workouts a week, the weight is reduced, 50 to 60% of what it used to be, when you were kind of, prepping your body for football. So, it's a lot of recovery, it's time, it's sleep. I'm sure the messaging from the coaches is a lot about those same things. I think the messaging is also like, hey, jump on your iPad. And we're gonna log this. We're gonna track it. Is dive into I'm speaking as offensive lineman or a linebacker is like dive into their to their fronts just to become familiar with the fronts that A&M likes to run or like Miami like to run or some of their blitz concepts or if I'm a linebacker some of their backfield sets or some of their Y motions and Y shifts just to be so that when you do find out who you play and the coaches present the players and the schemes and their formations and what they like to do and they get into all the analytics is like it's not new information to you because you've kind of been dabbling in it now for weeks. So it's the perfect blend of time off, rest, recovery, and work. And like I said, when you do get on the field and do the football work may not, it's actually more about us, meaning the Buckeyes, than it is about said opponents. So you go back through and just go, is there a concept that we struggled with? And I think, the Indiana game in the I was saying national championship, the Big Ten championship was an amazing understanding. And it's like, we talked about it soon thereafter is like the template is out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The fronts and the blitzes and the stunts and the loopers and the coverage on and marrying the back end, back end coverage and studying Brian Hayes' game plan to attack us, fixing those. And then not only do you fix those because Texas A&M or Miami might do the same thing, but if all goes well, like you're going to see Indiana again, you know what I mean, in Miami. And yes, they're going to do that same stuff to see if it's fixed, but they're going to have those other wrinkles. So it's getting ahead of that when you have the time to kind of fix some of the chinks in your armor to be as ready and as healthy when it's go time. Literally, then you're playing a game, on New Year's Eve, distractions around that. And then it's, 8, 9 days later, 10 days later, it's like, bam, 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 you don't have the time once you're really in motion.
Hey, do you remember back though? This was curious to me because this is what piques my interest about. Like you just brought it up, and I was going to bring it up with you. Indiana showed a way to frustrate Ohio State's offense like no other team did this year, right? So do you remember when y'all were getting ready for Miami? Do you remember stuff y'all put in? I mean, it's long ago now. You can tell the secrets, but it's 2002. But do you remember stuff y'all put in that month leading up to Miami that y'all had seen had given them problems during the year? Do you? I mean, I don't know if you remember specifically, but maybe do you remember looking at a specific team that played them that gave them frustration offensively? I mean, and how much of that did y'all end up incorporating? I guess.
Yeah, so sure. I don't recall, any specific team because again, you got to figure the Miami team that we played was a juggernaut. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
24, 25 games in a row. Most of them probably won by double digits or more. So to say that they were challenged by anybody was it ACC still, right? Or was it Big East? I think it was ACC.
Yeah. I
But
think it was.
it was
I don't
really close.
remember
It was
now.
really
Yeah,
close,
that's
right?
funny.
The one thing, and I think this is the one thing that and to go back to kind of bring everything full circle and talk about Ohio State, this season and going back to what you're asking from a question standpoint is like, you don't want to lose who you are and what got you there by trying to be somebody else.
Yeah.
So if there was a concept or a scheme or a front that a said team in your study and preparation for a set opponent had success with, you'll integrate it, but not like I'm talking 10 or 15%, and you'll dabble in it. And here's the thing though, when you get on the bowl site and you're really have your 2 or 3 days worth of work at your bowl site, which are your heavy workload days, if that new stuff doesn't work for you, and it's just I can't, blitzing from depth, I can't hit the pattern, and we, the defensive line say we're slanting from, over defense to under, and we're just not hitting our finishing points, and if it doesn't work, that shit gets scrapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'll go with what we know, and go with, go who brought you here, go with what brought us here. And I think that's just kind of, at least going back in my mind, it was we had a firm understanding, because that's the one thing that time gives you when you play these football games. And that's why, like, it's different between the BCS eras. Like, we won the Michigan game. There was no Big Ten championship game. And then it's like, we knew who we were playing. So it was like all eyes, on Miami for that 30 some days that you're talking about, that you're referencing, actually 30 plus days that we're referencing in between rest and recovery and the work. But now it's kind of up in the air. But when you know who you're going to play, you want to know them like the back of your hand. And I think that had a lot, that with us being who we were, wanting to play physical, wanting to, put on the heavier gloves and get into a street fight with Miami and make it ugly. We knew them very well. We knew what they like to do. And I think that's why the first, 3 to 5 series of the football games, everyone was so surprised that it was as close and that we were ahead at halftime and all those other things. And that's just the punching match. That's the chess match of, Miami going in at halftime with great players and great coaches too, changing some of those things. And as we saw, it was, getting the football to Kellen Winslow Jr., with his matchup. And this is not against anyone, whether it was C. Grant or Mike Doss, and how we were going to cover him, and but yet still frustrate Ken Dorsey and not allow them to get behind us, with Andre Johnson or Roscoe Parrish in the slot.
Yeah, Andre Johnson.
It was
that was a hell of a roster, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was a chess match, and I think that's
Willis McGahee.
Shoot, a lot of people don't even mention the trenches. Miami was as good in the trenches on O-line and D-line. Jonathan Vilma, DJ Williams, both of those guys had, probably have 1,000 tackles in the NFL.
I still see Vilma hitting Craig Krenzel at the goal line one time. That was one of the major Craig Krenzel, don't ever discount how tough that dude was, right? Wow.
Yeah.
By the way,
So I think that's the Ohio State's going to have to fix themselves in this period of time, and then also accentuate what they do well and kind of continue to layer. And then actually the one thing that I don't know, because I'm not privy to this information, and maybe you are or aren't either, is the whole Brian Hartline, Ryan Day, is there a new voice, in Columbus that we are unaware of, that they're interviewing for, it's like, who's going to be the play caller? They can say it's going to be a said person, who's going to have the construction of the run game, which has been, Tyler Bowen and Brian Hartline together, along with, Coach Day's input. Pass game, it's that's something that I think also, given that we have some time, it can get figured out and ironed out so it's ironclad, not week to week from Michigan to big championship game, which a lot of distractions kind of came up in that 7-day period.
So what would, by the way, Big East Conference, that's where Miami was at that point. Number one, I wanted to make sure people knew that I wasn't just sitting there like a lump on a log. I was actually looking stuff up while you were talking. How would you handle the Brian Hartline, Ryan Day? See, I would throw other guys in there. I mean, Billy Fessler's quarterback coach, right? And Tyler Bowen, is a run game coordinator and all that stuff, along with being offensive line coach, head offensive line coach. How would you handle? I mean, everybody talks about the play calling. The play calling is it's the final result of all these meetings you go through and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I try to explain this to people as often as possible. It's not like Brian Hartline has picked up a control handles for a video game, and just calling stuff. I mean, it's coming out of a pre-prepared, like that's redundant, a prepared package they've all agreed on and all this mostly agreed on. I'm sure there's consternation, but how would you handle, if you were Ryan Day, how would you handle that moving forward? Because there's a possibility they're going to play 3 games, not one. It wasn't like back in y'all's day, 1 game and you're done.
Right.
In the good old BCS days. How would you handle that? I mean, having been on a staff, the last couple of years, is at St. Ed's while your son played.
Sure.
I mean, just this isn't you knocking anything you've seen from Ohio State. This is you. If you were the head coach and had prowess in terms of offense, how would you handle this situation going forward?
So I think if I were Ryan Day, the one thing that I would do is I wouldn't just solely rely upon myself on what I think we should do. What I would do, and I think that's what this time has kind of maybe potentially given us, is if I was Ryan Day, and there's not a situation that pops in my brain, but I would use the resources around professional and college football, and just go, how would, call Pete Carroll, call Coach Saban, you know what I mean? Call other, qualified men, because again, Saban, he's probably the perfect guy to talk to, because it was, 3 coaches on his staff every year leaving, and so this awkwardness while he's trying to, win the SEC championship and win a national championship.
Let me interrupt you. Lane Kiffin got the Florida Atlantic job, and Saban said, "See you later." And they elevated Steve Sarkisian, who was basically a quality control guy, for want of another term, that 1 year. Urban Meyer, obviously, Tom Herman got the University of Houston job right after the regular season was over, and he ended up. They ended up doing some great things.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's another amazing resource of where, as opposed to, and again, I'm not trying to discount that Ryan Day can't just make this decision, but I think this time, and the situation, it gives him the opportunity to make 2 to 3 phone calls, sit on the phone for 60 to 90 minutes with Urban, with Coach Saban if he's in the Rolodex, or with, Pete Carroll or somebody, and just go, what would you, and this is not to take away, take back play calling from Brian Hartline, but like how to be collaborative, how to communicate it clearly so that the buy-in from the coaches and the buy-in from the players have you prepared, to your point, to go win this first one, to then go win that second one, which is going to be tough, likely against Georgia, what I mean? To then position yourself maybe for a rematch, with Indiana, because I don't think there's not a right answer. It's what's best for these players and this team in 2025 to go win 3 games in a row, right? And I would also say, given that Brian Hartline, has his next stop already lined up, and he's kind of like serving 2 masters. What's the best way, in your experience, and if I'm Ryan Day, talking to Saban, talking to Urban, to position him? What should I require from him to be in Columbus, but yet giving him the the bandwidth to be able to go nurture his baby, in South Florida, and and just talk through it all with other, and that's the one thing that I'll say, the great staffs and I know that the one thing that with Mason as a recruit, and even just since Coach Day's taken his job over, is he hires amazing people. I mean, the Matt Patricia hire, even the Jim Knowles hire served Ohio State, from a personality standpoint, probably didn't vibe with the Buckeye Nation. You can see he didn't vibe so much with some of the players, but like the hires that he makes, are amazing football men. And they're all collaborative. Like there's no dictator that, with a gavel going, bang, this is what we're going to do. And everybody just kind of falls in line. And I think that's what makes Ohio State and the brotherhood within the locker room and the culture of the players and the culture of the coaches there is extremely unique. But I think it's a collaborative messaging from Coach Day to put forth that plan to appease everyone, but really never lose sight on the goal, which is winning on New Year's Eve, winning on the 8th, winning on the 19th.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of cohesion
or lack thereof it,
a staff that's, gets along and who knows what's going on? You never know what's going on until you know what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Sure.
I mean, dude, what do you make about y'all's greatest rival, the great rival in sports? I mean, what's your reaction to what you've seen up there? I guess more importantly, I mean, I'm talking about, Michigan. What happened with Sharon Moore last week? All of a sudden, a young lady corroborates an investigation when, in fact, they had kind of hit a stalemate in the investigation. A young lady corroborates. Next thing you know, Ward Manuel fires him without cause. I'm talking about Sharon Moore. Sharon Moore, of course, probably thought he had slipped through, no problem, and in fact, came back to the cleaver came back and caught him, and then he went. Obviously, you lose your mind to a certain extent. I think when you lose a job like that for whatever reason, but then past that, but how as a program, I don't know if you would ever even give advice to Michigan,
No.
but number one, what's just your reaction to it? But then, man, how much can a program take, right?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, I have two leap thoughts. It kind of feels really good to be operating the way that Ohio State operates with the man that we have in charge in Ryan Day, and we can't take that for granted. I think it's satisfying that the chickens have come to roost, and this goes back to Harbaugh, and again, we've now seen it ad nauseum. If you're paying attention to college football and you're paying attention to Ohio State and Michigan, is all the dysfunction and violations and misdemeanors and felonies that have just been accumulated rule breaking that have accumulated on a docket of individuals brought in by Harbaugh. And while an ignorant Michigan person with blinders on will look at their record on the football field and the national championship in 2023 and the players that they have produced and all these other things, but and I think that's what's also very satisfying, again, is the university's investigation into the athletic department.
Yeah.
And that's Ward Manuel and below now.
Yeah.
So that's my one thought is that, not that it's about time, but it's like you can only, have skeletons in the closet and keep bundling bones and bodies, and closing that door so fast before you open the door and it all just comes tumbling out at you, right?
Yeah.
That's one. The other thing, as a married man with kids as well, I find myself just
repulsed,
feeling terrible for the wife and kids of Sharon Moore, and the relocating, and that they're gonna just like Sharon Moore and his family, if they're ever going to be together, or even if they're going to be separate, they have to go somewhere and almost start a new life, because they can't stay in Michigan. They probably won't want to be around each other. It's just you have kids that are going to grow up without their father. At least their real dad. You have a wife who's now whose face is all over the internet for doing nothing.
Yeah.
And being exposed. So can't go to the grocery store, can't get gas without, gas, can't go, get a massage without being recognized. Without the whispers and the BS and the whatever. And I think, as it relates to, Sharon Moore, lastly, is you reap what you sow. So like, and it's probably why it went so extreme to now the criminal side of what he did, is because he realized he was in a downspin. It's like, what does the gambler do? When he loses a bunch of money,
Doubles
goes
down.
finds more money and thinks they can double down on themselves and win it all back. And what happens? You bet the house, you lose the farm, right? And I think for him, he wanted to take out, anger and frustration. I mean, he's never going to be able to coach football ever again. A game that has done so much for him as a player and as a coach, he won't be able to touch anymore. So then what do you fall back on? You fall back on your family. Well, your transgressions now have literally created this massive void with you and your family. Your kids want nothing to do with you. Your kids might be old enough for the wife to actually tell them what your dad did.
Yeah.
So the kids will have a conception about their father and not wanting to be in close quarters with him ever again. So there are so many, things. But I do have to say that I find, an indirect sense of satisfaction that is happening to our rival because of the way in which they've operated for the last 5 years.
Yeah. What it life is weird like that, isn't it? Matt, I mean, what goes around comes around. I mean, really,
Yes.
I mean, I've experienced it. You've probably experienced it. I mean, not anywhere close to the degree this is, but it kind of makes you nauseous a little bit. I mean, just to think about all the things that were going on up there at certain times. And, this wasn't a one-time mistake, for example, for Sharon Moore. I mean, it'd been going on, you know what I mean?
And the one thing that again, if I had a fast forward button, and again, I'm not trying to say this is ever going to happen, but because we're living it out, and you have the gentleman that was kind of like the lead conspirator of all of it, Jim Harbaugh, now completely released from all of it, making $10 million a year coaching in the NFL,
Celebrated.
3,000 miles away, in Los Angeles, while the program, his alma mater, is in turmoil. I'm not trying to say if I had a crystal ball, I'd want to fast forward 25 years or maybe 30, 20 years and have Harbaugh like actually take accountability for all of it.
Yeah.
And just go, yeah, I knew. Yes, I knew he was a scumbag. Yes, I knew they were cheating. Yes, I knew there were recruiting violations, sleeping on a kid's, bunk bed and, throwing a football bare topped, with a high school recruit was wrong. And I knew Sharon was, a stopgap dude, but I wanted to be release myself from all this crap and go get my next job and kind of look out for me and so on. I just hope.
Yeah. Wait, add one more. And yes, I knew who that guy was standing next to my offensive coordinator and then my defensive coordinator and making wild gestations and gestures and stuff for several years. I knew who that guy was too. I can't recall his name, but I knew him.
So I just think for the sake of the game, because why are we talking about this right now? We love the game of football, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Purdue, it doesn't matter, right? Los Angeles Chargers is.
Flipping back to that Mendoza speech. I mean, exactly.
Yeah. And I just think for Jim Harbaugh to find his identity and to be known because of the game, owe it to the game at the right juncture, when you're, maybe not on your deathbed, but like when you're old in retirement, you know what I mean? Spend time with your grandkids, that somebody puts a microphone in front of your face, or, Netflix offers you the, nice little retirement chunk of money for you to do a special, and you just let all the cats and they scatter out of the bag.
Yeah.
Because and again, he doesn't have to. I just think he kind of owes it to the game because it's meant so much to him. And I think he's skating by very, very clean in this regard with the catastrophes that have happened because of him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What a legacy. As the old saying goes, what a legacy.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of legacies, Matt Wilhelm, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining the Tim May Show featuring Clay All again. And I'm gonna end the show with this, but I do want to ask you one last thing. What is the one thing you want Ohio State to get straight? Just give me one thing you want Ohio State to get straight before it takes on Miami / Texas A&M on December the 31st at Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, the Cotton Bowl?
Very easy question. And it's not that it's been bad. I just want to see the type of offensive line domination that we saw against Michigan get righted, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And that means running the ball when we want to run the ball successfully and protecting Julian Sand, our Heisman candidate, to be able to deliver the football down the field the way that we know he can.
Yeah. Every major rocket needs a launch pad, and the launch pad is the offensive line. And you're exactly right. What do we have? What prizes do we have for Matt for getting that answer right? I'm not sure.
Give me door number 3.
Yeah. Hey, but ladies and gentlemen, that's Matt Wilhelm. I'm Tim May. This has been the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall here. Boy, dude, as we record this, it's 10 days away from Christmas. I'm telling you, when you get my age, it just seems like it flies by, man.
It does.
These years. But enjoy your shopping, your last minute shopping. We'll get together again next week. Well, this is a regular feature on the Tim May Show. We're on here 3 times a week at least. I had a bonus session last week with Bill Bender. But Matt Wilhelm, thanks for joining us, my man. I'll see you next time.
You got it, brother. Anytime.